The judgment courtroom stretched like a cathedral of judgment, its crystalline walls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that translated the proceedings into thousands of alien languages. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center of it all, her blue uniform stark against the swirling colors of the Galactic Trade Consortium's tribunal chamber. 23 species had gathered to decide humanity's fate, their representatives arranged in ascending circles that disappeared into the shadows. Above Sarah had been Earth's primary diplomat for 15 years. She'd negotiated trade agreements with the silicon-based Veltari, established mining rights with the aquatic Nephim, and even managed to secure peaceful passage through Creolon space routes. But today, she wasn't here as a diplomat. She was here as the accused. "The charges are severe," announced Ambassador Zethkar, his reptilian features twisted into what humans had learned to recognize as disapproval. His scaled hands gestured toward the holographic displays floating around Sarah. "Humanity stands accused of technological contamination, aggressive territorial expansion, and violation of the consortium's development protocols." The evidence materialized in shimmering three-dimensional images: human settlements on 17 worlds, mining operations that had increased output by 300% using Earth technology, defensive satellites equipped with weapons that the consortium had never seen before. To the aliens, it looked like conquest. To Sarah, it looked like survival. "We followed every treaty," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the vast chamber without need for amplification. The acoustics here were designed to ensure every word reached every ear, no matter how alien. "We established colonies only in unclaimed systems. We shared our technology freely with trading partners. We defended ourselves only when attacked." Minister Kolsare, representing the Avian Sylphan Collective, ruffled her iridescent feathers in agitation. "Your species advances too quickly. In 2 centuries, you have achieved what takes most civilizations to millennia. This is ... unnatural." Sarah almost laughed. Unnatural, as if the universe cared about what was natural or not. Humans had clawed their way from caves to starships in a few thousand years, because they had to, because their world was harsh and their rivals numerous, because standing still meant death. "We adapt," Sarah replied simply. "It's what we do." The tribunal deliberated for 6 hours. Sarah stood motionless through it all, watching as the representatives whispered among themselves in clicks, chirps, and subsonic rumbles that her translator couldn't interpret. She knew the outcome before they announced it. She'd seen the fear in their compound eyes, the nervous twitching of their appendages, the way they avoided looking directly at the evidence of human achievement. They were afraid, not of human aggression, but of human potential. "The tribunal has reached its verdict," Zethkar announced, his voice echoing through the sudden silence. "Humanity is found guilty of accelerated development in violation of consortium protocols. The sentence is isolation. All human colonies outside the Sol system must be abandoned within 1 standard year. Earth will be quarantined until such time as humanity demonstrates compliance with galactic development standards." The words hit Sarah like physical blows. 17 colonies, 3 million humans who had built new lives among the stars. Centuries of exploration and discovery wiped away with a bureaucratic decree. "How long?" Sarah asked. "The quarantine will be reviewed in 500 standard years," Kolthara replied, her tone suggesting she considered this generous. 500 years, 20 generations of humans locked away while the galaxy moved on without them. Sarah closed her eyes and felt something cold and hard crystallize in her chest. When she opened them again, her expression had changed. The diplomat was gone. What remained was something the consortium had never seen before, but would come to know well. The exodus began immediately. Transport ships appeared at every human colony, their holds echoing with the sounds of families torn from their homes. Children who had been born under alien suns were forced to leave the only worlds they'd ever known. Scientists abandoned research projects that could have benefited the entire galaxy. Miners walked away from operations that had fed hungry worlds for decades. But not everyone left. Dr. Marcus Webb had been working on theoretical physics at the Kepler-4 to be research station when the evacuation order came. He was 43 years old, had 2 children back on Earth, and had just made a breakthrough in quantum field manipulation that could revolutionize space travel. He was also one of the 300 humans who simply disappeared instead of reporting to the transport ships. The consortium assumed they had died in accidents or chosen suicide over exile. They were wrong. Webb and his fellow disappeared had made a different choice. They had vanished into the asteroid fields and dead systems that dotted the galaxy's edge, places too remote or dangerous for regular patrols. Using stolen mining, equipment and salvaged ship parts, they began to build. The first hidden shipyard was carved into a rogue asteroid in the Barnard's Loop Nebula. The ionized gas provided perfect cover from sensors, and the asteroid's iron core gave them raw materials. Working in shifts around the clock, the human refugees began constructing something the galaxy had never seen. Ships designed not for exploration or trade, but for war. Sarah Chen had returned to Earth as ordered, but her exile was different from most. She'd been given command of Earth's remaining defense fleet, 12 obsolete cruisers and 30 patrol boats that the consortium had deemed acceptable for system defense. What they didn't know was that Sarah had also been given command of something else, the Silent Fleet. For 20 years, the humans worked in secret. Webb's breakthrough in quantum field manipulation led to the development of ships that could slip between dimensions, invisible to conventional sensors. Mining operations in the outer system provided materials under the guise of asteroid belt development. Earth's greatest minds, freed from the burden of diplomacy and trade negotiations, focused on a single goal. When they returned to the galaxy, they would not come as refugees begging for mercy. They would come as equals with the power to demand respect. The ships took shape slowly, each one a masterpiece of human engineering and determination. They were sleek and dark, their hulls made from materials that absorbed scanner beams instead of reflecting them. Their weapons were based on principles the consortium had declared too dangerous for civilized species. Their defenses incorporated technologies that turned the galaxy's own laws of physics against any attacker. But perhaps most importantly, they were crewed by humans who had nothing left to lose. Sarah stood on the observation deck of the shipyard, hidden in Proxima Centauri's asteroid belt, watching the construction of the flagship that would soon bear her into battle. They had named it Defiance, and it was beautiful in the way that predators are beautiful, elegant, efficient, and absolutely lethal. Status report, she called to Webb, who had aged 20 years in the service of their cause, but never lost the fire in his eyes. Fleet strength stands at 412 vessels, he replied, checking his datapad. Everything from single-pilot fighters to the new dreadnoughts, all equipped with phase shift drives and quantum armor. We're ready. Admiral. Sarah still wasn't used to the title, but it fit better than diplomat ever had. Diplomacy required trust, and the consortium had made it clear that humans would never be trusted. So they had become something else instead. "Any word from the other cells?" Sarah asked. 17 confirmed, scattered across the galaxy, each. One has been building their own forces. The Arcturus group has developed new missile technology. The Vega cell has been working on fighter tactics. And the Ross 128 operation ... Double quotes, Webb smiled grimly. They've been mapping every consortium military installation within 50 light years. Sarah nodded. The network they had built was invisible, patient, and absolutely comprehensive. Every human who had chosen exile over surrender had become part of it. Scientists, miners, traders, even the children who had grown up in the hidden stations, all of them, united by a simple understanding. The galaxy had made its choice. Now humanity would make theirs. "Send the signal," Sarah ordered. "It's time to come home." The return, the first sign that something had changed, came at the edge of consortium space, where automated monitoring stations detected an anomaly that shouldn't have existed. For 3 seconds, long-range sensors registered the presence of what appeared to be a massive fleet. Then the readings vanished, dismissed by the station's artificial intelligence as a system glitch. Similar glitches began appearing throughout consortium territory. Ships that weren't there, energy signatures that couldn't exist, gravitational distortions that defied explanation. The reports piled up in the Consortium Defense Council's databases, filed under technical malfunctions and promptly forgotten. The consortium had grown comfortable in the 20 years since humanity's exile. Trade flowed smoothly along established routes. Conflicts were resolved through committee hearings rather than battles. The galaxy had achieved the peace and stability that the ruling species had always desired. They had also grown soft. Ambassador Zethkar was reviewing routine patrol reports in his office on the capital world of Nexus Prime when his aide, a nervous young Krelin named Silt H, burst through the door without permission. "Sir," Silt H chittered, his insectoid features twisted with anxiety. "You need to see this immediately." The holographic display that materialized above Zethkar's desk showed a star chart of the Sol system. At its edge, where Earth's quarantine, sensors should have detected nothing larger than a supply drone. Hundreds of red dots marked the presence of unknown vessels. Sensor malfunction, Zethkar dismissed, but his scaled tail lashed behind him in unconscious agitation. The quarantine has been in effect for 2 decades. Earth barely has enough ships to defend their own system. Sir Silt H pressed. These readings have been confirmed by 17 different monitoring stations. And there's more. The display shifted, showing similar formations throughout consortium space. Fleets that appeared from nowhere held position for exactly 60 seconds, then vanished again. Always in empty space, always just long enough to be detected, always in perfect formation. "Get me Minister Kolthara," Zethkar ordered, his voice tight with a feeling he hadn't experienced in decades: fear. The emergency session of the Consortium Council convened within hours. Representatives from 23 species gathered in the same chamber where humanity had been judged and found wanting. The irony was not lost on those who remembered that day. "The situation is unprecedented," Kolthara reported, her feathers pale with stress. "Our intelligence networks have gone silent across 7 sectors. Trade routes are experiencing unexplained delays, and we've received ... a message." The chamber fell silent as a holographic figure materialized in the center of the floor. Admiral Sarah Chen looked exactly as she had 20 years earlier, her uniform crisp and her expression unreadable. But there was something different in her eyes, a confidence that bordered on predatory. Members of the Galactic Trade Consortium, Sarah's image began. I hope you remember me. I certainly remember you. 20 years ago, you decided that humanity was too dangerous to remain among the stars. You were probably right. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. The projection continued, speaking with the calm assurance of someone who held all the advantages. During our exile, we've had time to think, to plan, to build. The galaxy taught us that strength is the only language that civilized species truly understand, so we learned to speak it fluently. The image gestured, and the holographic display expanded to show the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. Ships, beyond counting, spread throughout consortium space like a vast web. Bases hidden in nebulae and dead systems. Manufacturing facilities that had operated undetected for 2 decades. We call it the Silent Fleet, Sarah continued. Every ship built by humans who were forced to abandon their homes. Every weapon forged by families torn apart by your judgment. Every strategy developed by a species you tried to bury. Zethkar found his voice. What do you want? Sarah's smile was sharp as broken glass. Everything you took from us, plus interest. The negotiation that followed would later be called the most tense diplomatic standoff in galactic history. It took place not in the comfortable council chambers of Nexus Prime, but in the cold vacuum of space above the dead world of Kepler 438b. The consortium sent their finest diplomats aboard their most advanced vessels. Humanity sent Admiral Chen aboard a single ship that defied every known law of physics. The human flagship Defiance materialized out of empty space like a nightmare made manifest. It was massive, larger than anything in the consortium fleet, but moved with the grace of a living creature. Its hull seemed to drink in the light from nearby stars, creating a distortion field that made it painful to look at directly. Captain Alina Vasquez, Sarah's second-in-command, stood at the tactical station with her hands resting casually on weapons controls that could sterilize planets. She had been 7 years old when her family was evacuated from the mining colony on Gliese 667cc. Now she was 37, and every year of exile had been shaped into a weapon. Consortium fleet holding position at maximum sensor range, she reported. They're scared, Admiral. They should be, Sarah replied, settling into the command chair that had been crafted from the hull of the transport ship that had carried her family away from their first off-world home. Open a channel, the main screen shimmered, revealing the interior of the consortium flagship. Ambassador Zethkar sat, surrounded by his advisors, all of them trying to maintain the illusion of authority while staring at sensors that couldn't fully comprehend what they were seeing. You have our attention, Zethkar said. State your terms. Sarah leaned forward, her hands steepled before her. Immediate recognition of human territorial claims to all 17 systems we previously occupied. Full membership in the consortium. Council with voting rights proportional to our population. Reparations for 20 years of forced exile. And a formal apology. Impossible, Minister Kolthara interjected, her image flickering in a secondary display. The consortium cannot simply overturn 2 decades of established policy. Then the consortium can learn to live with the consequences, Sarah replied. Her gesture activated the Defiance's sensor array, revealing the true scope of the Silent Fleet. Ships materialized throughout the system like stars being born. Dreadnoughts that dwarfed consortium battleships. Carriers launching swarms of fighters that moved in perfect coordination. Weapons platforms that had been waiting in the system's asteroid belt for years. In minutes, the consortium negotiation fleet found itself outnumbered 50-1. "This is not negotiation," Sethkar hissed. "This is extortion. This is education," Sarah corrected. "For 20 years, you've enjoyed the peace that came from humanity's absence. But peace without justice is just postponed war. We're offering you the chance to choose which you prefer." The silence stretched between the fleets, filled with the tension of weapons primed but not yet fired. Finally, Minister Kolthara spoke. "If we agree to your terms, what guarantee do we have that humanity will honor the peace?" Sarah's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the diplomat she had once been. "The same guarantee the galaxy has always had, that humans keep their promises, whether those promises are for peace or for war." The negotiations took 6 days. The consortium representatives argued and pleaded and threatened by turns, but the mathematics were simple. Humanity had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, while the consortium had spent those same years assuming it would never come. When the final agreements were signed, humanity emerged not as a conquered species begging for readmission, but as the galaxy's newest superpower. The silent fleet disappeared as suddenly as it had appeared, its ships returning to the hidden bases and secret shipyards that would continue to operate as insurance against future betrayals. Admiral Sarah Chen stood once again in the chamber, where humanity had been judged, but this time she wore the insignia of the consortium's newest council member. The same representatives who had voted for exile now rose to acknowledge her authority, some with grudging respect, others with barely concealed fear. "The galaxy has changed," she said in her inaugural address. "Humanity has changed. We are no longer the naive species that believed good intentions were enough to earn a place among the stars. We are something new, shaped by exile, forged by necessity, and tempered by time." She paused, her gaze moving across the assembled aliens who had once dismissed humanity as too young and too dangerous. "You were right to fear us," she continued, "but you were wrong to think that exile would make us weaker. Instead, it made us what we needed to become, what the galaxy needed us to become." Years later, historians would debate whether humanity's return marked the beginning of a new golden age or the end of the consortium's peaceful era. But for Sarah Chen, standing in the chamber where her species had been condemned, the answer was simple. Humanity had come home. Asterisk.